Everybody. It's Tuesday at noon. It's me again. Um, Today, I say every week I'm excited. This week I'm extra excited. Sarah from Mighty and Bright is joining me. Probably lots of you know her. She's a wonderful advocate in the community. And, excuse me, she's also just an amazing person. And I almost never, hello, prep for these. It's just, hey, Sarah, I'm going to have you join. Let's see. Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. It's so good to see you. I was
You
just saying
too.
that, I never ever prep for these, but because Amanda from YSC thought she was doing a blind intro for us, even though we met years ago and maybe both forgot, um, that we had a call first, and I'm so excited to have this call because usually these are kind of just like super casual. I've done no prep. I'm like, here's somebody who has a cool story or is doing something interesting, and we just kind of talk. But
hmm
we did a little prep, and I think this one feels important to me.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I think parenting after cancer is something like a lot of people need help with. It just doesn't feel like there's a whole lot that's out there, and it's such a unique experience to the young survivor world.
Yeah, totally. So before we dive in, do you want to do a quick intro and tell everybody who you are and about Mighty and Bright?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sarah. And I started Mighty and Bright back in 2015 after I had a divorce that was really hard. And then I was diagnosed with cancer in 2017 and realized like the divorce was hard, but like cancer is a whole other level of just like hard. And after running Mighty and Bright for, a couple of years and realizing how hard kids were having it with divorce, and then watching my own daughter struggle with my cancer diagnosis and finding like absolutely no help to parent through cancer, I decided I would write a children's book that fit what I needed, which was basically to explain what cancer is, because none of the books out there really explained what it was and then how it would actually affect her day to day. And it comes with a calendar that kids can use so that they understand how the treatment's going to affect their actual life. And it's got like stickers and things so that you know who's going to do drop off and pick up at school, and it helps you plan activities so that you can keep connected with your kids, because I was so exhausted I couldn't even come up with ideas for things that we could do. And so this really just filled that gap for me. And then I was like, there's nothing out there.
Yeah,
So I've sort of been, Mighty and Bright is a place where I can help families going through all kinds of difficult things because I've been there and didn't have any help.
it's such an amazing resource, and I really feel like it's such a perfect example of one of those super practical things that's
Yeah.
so hard to find. Like
Yeah.
we and part of this, I know we're going to dive into being super moms who think they can do everything, but it's like I don't know if it was just that women weren't allowed to complain, like I'm so tired, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to talk to my kids, and
Yeah.
that just sort of kept this problem perpetuating until now, when I think we're at this moment where we're all allowed to say, hey, I'm
Mhm.
struggling. And
Yeah.
especially during COVID, I mean, I've even volunteered my kids to read stories over Zoom to other people's smaller children to like give their parents a break. Because it's just like,
That's awesome. What a great idea.
and there's like authors that are doing it, but I'm like, my
Hmm.
10-year-old can read a children's book. Their
Totally.
toddlers, if they can sit in front of a screen, which is, hard
I
for all
love
of us
that.
on specific days. But yeah, I think I just love that. I love that it's a practical tool that you can use when there's any kind of like difficult situation, because kids
Mhm.
often emotionally get left in the dust when the
Yeah.
focus is on someone else.
Yeah, 100%. And also, I think most parents don't really realize how simple it can be to help them because, a lot, especially younger kids that are, not super verbal, um, all you need to do is show them what to expect each day. And it really relieves like so much of their anxiety. And it's so simple. And I think that's why, this really, because I developed my co-parenting calendar for divorce with a child therapist. And
Hmm.
I was just like, my mind was completely blown at how easy it was, because when you're dealing with something difficult, the last thing you want is a whole lot of instructions about what to do.
Yeah.
Like, my life now is all about keeping things as simple as humanly possible, because life just throws you enough crap as it is. The last thing you need is more stuff to do.
Oh yeah,
So,
totally. And if it's too
yeah,
hard to implement, you're never gonna figure out and use it. It's got to be like simple
absolutely.
and easy, and the kids have to be able to do it and participate.
Hmm.
Um, it's funny that you say that about little children just wanting to know what's happening in a
Yeah.
day. I had forgotten about this. My kids every night used to say, "What's the plan for tomorrow?" Because we did that, right? Like
Yeah.
tomorrow we're going to get up and have breakfast and you're going to go to school and then dad's
Hmm.
picking you up and then, whatever it was. But um, it's such a relief for them to know what the plan is.
Yeah.
And we often don't tell them. They're just like expected to go with it.
Right. I think it's, and that takes up a lot of space. It's like swirling around in their little heads, and we don't even realize it, but if you think about it, like how much we rely on our phones, like if I didn't have my phone, I
Mhm.
would freak out. And kids are the same way, in that they just need something that belongs to them, that doesn't have the cat's vet appointment on it, that they can look at and have it answer their questions
Yeah,
about what is
totally.
happening.
For sure.
Especially when everything's changing all the time.
Yeah. Well, when we had our prep call, we had such a lovely conversation about the ways that our parenting has changed. And I feel like I should preface it by saying that I know for women, like anyone who's in this community, parenting is such a hot topic, much more so than maybe in other spaces,
Hmm.
because many people can't have children, or that was a
Hmm.
choice that was taken away from them, or now they have
Yep.
to go through IVF, or there's every
Hmm.
possible manifestation of complication happens. And even if you do have children and had a diagnosis or had a preventative mastectomy, it of course changes your parenting as well. So
Hmm.
I just want to say that, I don't want to upset anyone. And you and I are just talking about our experiences as
Yeah.
two, having two very different experiences too,
Yeah.
and talking about how we cope with that. So
Yeah.
don't want to rub
Yeah.
anybody
Well
wrong.
said.
Yeah,
Well said.
thanks. So
So,
I would love to hear a little bit, about how you think things have changed for you as a mom in your survivorship.
I think for me, um, there was a big grieving process that I had to go through myself, recognizing that I felt really lucky that I had my daughter before my diagnosis, but then also having to grieve the fact that I knew I was never going to have more kids. Um, and that was really hard. And the other thing that was so scary to me was, like, especially right when I was diagnosed, was what happens if I'm not going to make it? And, in my family, every woman has had cancer. And my aunt, my dad's sister, she passed away in the 80s and left behind three kids. And so this was a very real thing for me. It felt really scary. And there's like this awful feeling of, like, do I enjoy every moment? And also, I'm so tired. And, it's like there's guilt that goes on top of, like, this diagnosis. And now that I'm like 3 years out from it, I would love to say, oh, I don't, I savor every minute. And, that's not a reasonable expectation for
Yeah.
any human, because parenting is really hard, and it's really hard especially when you are, like, dealing with a lot of the post cancer stuff, or the in treatment stuff, where you're tired and you're just trying to do the very best. And I think the thing that helped me a lot was, during my beginning part of my business, I did a lot of research about parenting and what it takes to be a good parent. And that allowed me to let go of some of my guilt, because
Yeah.
it turns out, like, you don't actually need to be like doing backflips or turning yourself into a pretzel to be an awesome parent. Like, it is not about showing up and being perfect all the time. It's actually about showing up, and like when you make mistakes, because literally everybody makes mistakes, nobody's perfect. Um, you know, you apologize, and they learn from your repair. You know,
Yeah.
they learn from you saying you're sorry. They learn that it's okay for them not to be perfect. And I think the other thing, and I know that you and I talked about this, was realizing that I can't be the sun and the moon and like everything in my child's world,
Yeah.
because if I am, then she doesn't have anybody else to talk to. And as a single parent for like 6 years, that was a tough one for me. I was used to doing everything and I had to let other people into my world.
Yeah. I think that was the thing that we really had in common,
Hmm.
um, is that realization. And, you know, I lost my mom. I was in my early 20s, but it still felt like I still really, and I still feel like I really need a mom. I actually, one of my friends was on the phone with his mom in front of me a couple weeks ago, and I started to cry. It's just like,
Yeah.
you know, we had such a strong nuclear family with me and my brother and my parents. And without my mom, it felt there was this huge void. And I feel really genuinely lucky that I know other adult women who are that age and friends' moms, and so many different people tried to step in to like fill little bits of that relationship that was missing,
Yes.
and people who took care of me in different ways. And I'm so hyper aware of that too, that
Hmm.
creating something that is, and this is not to say anything disparaging about people who have really amazing, strong nuclear family units. I just now, also as a divorced woman, really believe that it's important for them to have this diversity in adult support and attention, because it does feel like maybe I'm not going to be an old lady, and I don't want my kids to have something. You know, there's moments where something really amazing happens for me, and I pick up my phone and I'm like, I don't know who to call.
Yeah.
And it's like there's just some moments where you want your mom,
Yeah.
and we all have that, and our kids are going to have that. But I think us, you know, one of the things that we both are trying so hard to do is have our kids feel supported and know that they're going to be okay, that they're going to have other people there, that um, there is an infinity amount of love that you can have, and that's not the same as what it is with your mom, but you're not going to be isolated and alone if something
Yeah.
happens to us.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think it's a really hard thing to figure out how to provide for your kids, especially because it can feel so overwhelming to figure out like, well, how do I teach my kid that there can be an infinity amount of love when like my kid is like attached at my hip and has always been like, I just want mommy. I only want mommy. And so for me, I think that's part of what made it so terrifying is like, I am her person. Like,
Right.
she doesn't trust anybody else. She doesn't even trust her dad. Like, she does not want anybody else. Um, and and I think like that becomes a really scary thing. But I also think like we tend to make these things enormous and only ours to solve.
Yeah.
And I think that that does not make our lives any easier. Like when we put all that pressure on ourselves, like nobody was meant to do this by themselves. Like nobody was.
Yeah.
And I think all we need to realize is like by placing these people in their lives, you know, that's all we need to do. Like it's not us to make their relationships happen. It's like some of this is stuff that naturally occurs over time. We can't force it.
Right.
And and like for me, I just automatically assumed that because my daughter was like attached to me, that I would be the one that she would tell about everything. And I found like even at 7 years old, she was trying to protect me. She didn't necessarily want to tell me everything. She told my boyfriend and my mom things that she never told me. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm so glad these people are here, you
Yeah.
know?
Sure. You know, you touched on something that I think is so important a little bit earlier, which is like admitting that you don't, you, one, that you shouldn't be everything, but also
Yes.
that you can't be. And I think that's really hard too.
Yes.
Like, I, even now, like when my kids are with their dad and they've been home for homeschool since the very beginning of COVID. So we're nearing on a year. and they've just started doing some amount of school at his house, and I had crippling guilt. And I think it really, like, there's the general mom guilt, but then there's also that guilt of like, I'm trying to enjoy every second. I need, and you forget about yourself. Like, you can't
Hmm.
possibly enjoy every second, like you said, anyway. But
Yeah.
then you can't even enjoy most of them if you're tired and stressed out
Yeah.
and you're together 24/7 for an entire year
Yeah.
without really much other human interaction. It's just
Yeah.
too much, and understanding that it's okay to say, you know what, we used to live in communities. It used to be that I would open my front door and my kids could walk across the street to your house and have a cookie and chat with you about whatever. And you know, like, we're just in this
Yeah.
moment that's so weird, and we've
Yeah.
created these situations where we're supposed to do so much, and it's
Hmm.
really just cancer or otherwise impossible.
Yeah. I totally agree. And it really, it hurts everybody's quality of life, I think. And living in that and having to be okay with it is really tough, you know?
Mhm.
And it's okay to feel like it's not okay, because it's not, like, this is not normal.
Yeah.
This is not the way that we were meant to be. And I think that's why it's like so important to have an online community too, is because, like, in a time where we are not able to, you know, be physically with other people, having your kids read to other people's kids, like, realizing that there's a bigger world out there, having a community, you know, where you can talk to people about this stuff is so important.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty sure I said this to you on the phone. Like, the very first time I met another young mom who had had a preventative mastectomy, it was like this immediate, like, we all have different experiences, but when you find someone who had a similar one, whether it's because of children or age or diagnosis
Hmm.
or staging, whatever it was, that you have this like immediate bond.
Yeah.
And that is really what is so special and magical about these online communities, but also
Hmm.
what is keeping me sane right now.
100%. Yeah, actually, for me, it was the first time I really realized how not alone I was at the Young Survival Coalition Summit. And and I think that also was when I realized how important it was to provide a resource for these moms and dads that are with, you know, other types of cancers, or some breast cancer too.
Yeah.
Um, was like, everybody is walking around in this, like, you know, room full of all these amazing nonprofit organizations, and they're collecting pins and pens and shirts and all these things to take home to their kids,
Yeah.
and there's nothing for kids.
Right.
And so many of us were like, my terror was all about my child,
Yeah.
you know, or my terror was, or my grief was about what this means for my family or my future family planning. And like, it felt like so few people were talking about it. And so it felt like such an amazing like connection and community to have. And actually, not to sound like super promotional, but like when I was talking to YSC earlier, they're having a virtual hangout, like a mom's night out, on April 22nd.
Sweet.
And I think that is exactly the kind of thing that we need, you know, as young survivors, is really people who understand all of the different elements of what it means to be a young person who's dealing with this. And we have stuff that does not apply to other people and makes it feel like we have something completely different.
Yeah, totally. I mean, my mom died 15 years ago, and I just this fall was like, I'm going to try to dive into what it meant to be a caregiver, because I never considered how that experience changed every single decision, like major life decision I've made since then. I got
Yeah.
married really young. I not I mean, I was 24, which feels now like I was a baby. But, you know,
Totally.
then I had my kids like right away, because I just was like, oh, I'm not going to live long and I really want to do this. And it wasn't until my son was born that I even started going to see an oncologist to talk about my risk and to figure out what I was going to do,
Mhm.
because they present your mortality in such a different way. and seeing, it just, I can't think of a thing that I've decided to do that isn't somehow about cancer, which is
Yeah.
such a huge bummer. And I think even doctors don't know what it's like to
Hmm.
be in the headspace of someone whose whole adult life, or whatever it is, like it's ever present.
Hmm.
It's a little black cloud that follows all of us around who have any association with this community, whether
Hmm.
you've had cancer yourself or you've cared for someone or whatever it is. It's just,
Hmm.
it's impossible to escape having an impact, I think, everything, but also how you parent and how you think about your role as a parent and how you set up a support system. I still think about, like, and my kids are 10 and 12 now. I'm like, who's going to take them
Yeah.
if something happens to me and their dad? Like, who's the next, you know, I just, the whole mortality piece is so ever present when there's kids around, and it's hard to talk to them about. My daughter, I never told my kids didn't know that my mom died until they realized that my dad's wife wasn't my mom. And that was, like, that
Yeah.
takes a while, right? Like, understanding your family and
Hmm.
how they fit together is kind of a funny thing when you're a kid. And my daughter was maybe 4, and when I would, like, pick her up almost every day, she'd whisper in my ear, "You're not going to die today." Like, she would say all these really creepy little kid things that were sort of funny. And I'm like, "You're right, I'm not going to die today." But how worried they are, and like you said, your daughter
Hmm.
trying to protect you, and just, like, how do you have those conversations when we're part of a culture where death is something that we don't talk about well? It's scary. It's triggering. They don't understand cancer. There's not a lot of, your resource is so very important, but there aren't a ton of things out there that talk about what that means from a child
Hmm.
perspective. And
Yeah.
then just recently, my daughter was like, "Am I going to have a mastectomy when I grow up?" And I was like, "I hope not."
Yes. I think my daughter just yesterday was like, I really don't want you to die. It's been 4 years since
Yeah,
my diagnosis. She's like, please, please don't die. And she said things to me where she's basically just accepted that she's going to get cancer
yeah,
at some point in her life. And the only thing that I can say to her is science is moving so fast
yeah,
that when my aunt died, she died because they told her she had the good kind of cancer. They didn't know anything.
right,
They took too long to treat her because they didn't understand what was happening. I was diagnosed 4 years before she was, like, because I had early detection.
right.
We have chemos now, we have pills, we have immunotherapy. These are things we have now, and you're a kid. And
Right.
that is like, imagine how far science is going to come by the time you're old enough. So I cannot promise you that you're not going to get it, but if you do, it will be very different than
Yeah.
it was when I had it. And it's going to be like totally different than when my Aunt Lois had it. It's
Right.
just like so different.
So, I have a question for you. I've had a whole
Yeah.
bunch of doctor's appointments lately because I was so bad for the whole year of COVID, and then was like, "Oh, I missed my endocrinologist appointment. I missed this. I
Hmm.
missed that." Like, I've been going to a bunch of things in the last couple of weeks, and every time I'm going to the doctor, my daughter especially is like, "Why?
Yeah.
Why are you going?" Like, it's so it's
They're
scary.
triggered.
Yeah. Does your daughter
Yeah.
do that when you would just have, like, if I go to the dentist, they're like, "How long are you going to be? What are they looking for?" Like, it's always a thing.
Yeah. What's funny is like once you've been through this, it's really hard to know what's like every kid and what is like cancer trauma,
Yeah.
because my daughter has always been that way.
Mhm.
Like even when I go upstairs, she's like, I don't want you to leave me. I don't. I don't want to be alone. And I'm like, dude, I'm upstairs. You're
Yeah.
cool. Um, so yeah, I mean, every time I leave the house, it doesn't even matter if I'm going to a doctor's appointment. She's like, where are you gonna be? How long are you
Yeah.
gonna be? I don't want to be by myself. I'm like, you're not by yourself. like, you know. So yeah, she does that every time. I
Yeah. And
don't
that guilt is real too, right? Like, it's hard to be like, you're going to be okay and not feel bad then when you walk out the door.
Yes. The only thing that kind of keeps me in the right headspace for that stuff is recognizing that if I sacrifice everything for her, then she will grow up sacrificing everything for other people.
Yeah.
And that is not the life I want for her. I want her generation to have better boundaries than our generation does, because this is a bunch of crap.
Oh, totally.
This guilt sucks, and I don't want her to have it.
Yeah, that was my other point I wanted to bring up about admitting that you can't do everything. And you said something that I'm not remembering the phrase that you said because I'm just like Swiss cheese brain.
Oh,
But
yeah.
um, the idea that you're modeling that. Like if we're trying to do it
Mm-hmm.
all, being
Yeah.
exhausted and doing a terrible job and never taking a minute for ourselves, we're showing our kids that
Mm-hmm.
that's what you're supposed to do. And
Right.
none of us want that for them.
Mm-mm.
Of course not. We want them to be able to say, I need help, or I don't know, or I need support, or I need a break. And if we don't show them that,
Yeah.
they're never
And
going to
it's
do it.
and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to not be perfect. Like if they see us constantly striving for more and more and more and more and perfection and always be moving, we're not giving them permission to rest. Like we have to be, and it's so hard, but we have to be what we want them to be. And I really want my kid to be able to sit around and watch Netflix and not feel bad about herself for doing it.
Yeah.
Like, and that has been such a challenge for me with cancer. Like I had a job, a full-time job that I went back to after cancer, and they were like, we basically want you here like 50, 60 hours a week. And I think if my body had allowed me to do that, like if I hadn't had the disability that is cancer, I probably would have pushed myself.
Yeah.
And that is not a healthy thing for anybody to do, um, let alone if you have, cancer. It's not healthy. It's not a healthy dynamic for your family. It's not good for your health. I do not want my kid growing up thinking that that is normal or
Right.
that that is what we should be striving for. It's like about like daily balance. It's not even about like, I really hate the like work-life balance that all of these jobs are talking about. Oh,
Yeah.
we really value work-life balance. Like if you need to go to your kids like, you know, doctor's appointment, that's just fine. You just make up the hours later. It's like that is not work-life balance.
Right.
Work-life balance is not feeling guilty every second that you are at home because you're not at work, and feeling guilty every second, that you're with your kid at work because you're not with your kids. Like
Yeah.
that is not a good feeling. I really want to make sure that I am modeling for my kid, because they do not listen to us, in case you haven't noticed. They
No,
don't listen
totally.
to a word we say. All they do is see what we are doing and see our actions. That's all.
Yeah. I
They
think
tune us
it's,
out.
yeah. I mean, there's like a moment where we know everything, and then we like are peeking into the knowing absolutely nothing phase of like
Hmm.
teenagerhood. And
So
hopefully on the
sad.
other end, they'll know that we know something again. But yeah,
Yeah.
really, it's so hard. And I think another thing you said that was so smart is really just about apologizing and
Hmm.
explaining and
Yeah.
saying, like we have this conversation here all the time. Like, I don't know how to work all day during the day and also help you with school and stop and have lunch and
Hmm.
do your sewing project and check your math homework. Like I don't know how to do it. And
Yes.
like, can you help me by
Hmm.
only asking me when you really need help? Like it's,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yes.
And maybe they were like, why figure it out, dum dum? But I feel good about almost over
Yes.
communicating with them and saying, I want to do this with you. And I
Hmm.
can't right now because I'm doing this other thing. And can we do it in 15 minutes or, whatever it is? But I think that's one of the things that,
I actually wrote that down. Over communicating, because it's not over communicating.
but we were taught that it was,
That's
right?
yes. And
Yeah.
but that is what age appropriate honesty is. It's about like saying literally all the things, because nobody, like our kids don't have any idea what, like they just think we're God and we should be able to do everything. And taking you through taking them through all those steps by saying things like, I want to be able to do this. I can't figure out how. Like, I need your help. Like,
Yeah.
it's not putting too much on them to say, like, dude, like, I need your help. I need you to stop, like, basically acting like everything is an emergency when everything isn't an emergency because I can't do all of the things.
Yeah.
You can get your own toast.
I'm
Everything's
always
fine.
I'm always saying act like we're on the same team. We're on the same
Yeah.
team. Like
Hmm.
we're working towards the same goal of like health and sanity. Like please
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
It is so hard though.
Yeah. I think it's really when your kids are young, like little toddlers, it's extra because they're just like, I remember when my daughter was like 2, I just felt like I was constantly trying to save her life. Like she was constantly like trying to dart in front of traffic. She was constantly like
Yeah.
putting things in her mouth, and it was just like a full-time job to make sure she didn't accidentally kill herself.
Yeah.
Um, and like it was easier to go through cancer when she was 7 as opposed to what it would have been like when she was younger. But that whole thing still holds, which is to over communicate to them and to like make sure that they understand what's going on because they are brilliant. Like we don't really, I think my degree is in psychology, but it wasn't specialized on children because I never had any experience with children until I had my own. And I think if I had understood how interesting they are, I would have specialized in them because they understand so much more than we give them credit for. Like they can't communicate, but they understand. So the
Right.
more that we can talk to them, even when they're 2, 3, like I had a 2-year-old that I put in therapy, and my ex-husband was like, she's 2. But then, like, that helped so much.
Yeah.
It's like they really get it. And talking to them over and over and over again. And I think that's part of why my calendar works so well. Not, you don't need to use my calendar, you can use any calendar, you can like make your own. Um, it's the visual part of it because the way that kids learn, they need to see the same things over and over again. They're visual people. That's why when you give them a book like Goodnight Moon, they want to read it over and over and over and over again until you're ready to check it.
Right.
It's like they're processing more and more each time, which is why I think so many parents reach for books when something hard is happening, is because they realize like, kids learn from the book. So having that calendar or having some visual aid where you can remind the kid like you're safe. Like this here calendar is a reminder of all the things that are happening, of all the people that care about you, of all the people that are coming to this house, and no matter what their age is, they need that. They need that reminder. A person's brain isn't even fully developed until they're 25.
Yeah.
you know so yeah,
Well,
I think we just tell them over and over again, we show them it's important.
it is. So for people who want to know more about you or to buy the product,
Yeah.
what's the best way to stay connected with you, Sarah?
You can follow me on Instagram. I post all kinds of things that are basically about this, about talking to your kids. So I'm Mighty and Bright Co. And then my website is mightyandbright.com. And like I said, you do not have to buy my calendar. You can take inspiration from what I have done. All of my books are in my link in my profile. I just really, really believe that this is really a simple way to help your kids a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an elegant and easy solution to something that feels complicated when you're in it.
Yeah.
So thank
It,
you for that.
oh yeah. I was creating something I really wish that I had had earlier.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for the time and for
Thank
being you.
you.
And I love talking to you, and I'm excited to stay in touch
Me
and
too. Thanks, Kristen.
post COVID give you a hug.
Yes. Please.
Well, have a great day, Sarah, and I'll talk to you
You
soon.
too.
All right,
Thank
bye bye.
you.